Gerald Clark back with you today on June 19th, 2016 for episode 3. The title of this recording is going to be Marduk equals Nibiru, Arrival Declared. So some of the headlines and questions we're going to bring up today. First of all, I want to point out that Marduk is the offspring of Enki and Isis-Ninmah, whose planetary affiliation is Venus. The next topic we'll go on to is to look at how Marduk makes claims that Nibiru is his planet in the Enuma Elish. And also the rest of the affiliations that we have with the Enuma Elish solar systems in our planetary names. We'll go over that real quickly. I got to turn my headphone volume down just real quick. Okay. Then we're going to look at the Lucifer scope on Mount Graham. We just said that Marduk renamed himself the planet after him, so is that what they're looking for? Marduk or Nibiru? It brings up an interesting question. And then we looked at Palmyra last time, and I wanted to do a further link to affiliate Marduk with Moloch in the New World Order. The next item I'm going to bring up is how Enlil-Yahweh and Marduk were at war in Mesopotamia. And it shows up in a document that I want to show you, because a lot of people don't believe me when I tell them that Yahweh is Enlil, but it's clearly there in the documents. And also, Marduk claims to be the Most High. I mean, if he made himself after, or Nibiru after him, from their standpoint, that'd be the Most High. So I'll show you that in the table. And finally, I need to back up and do some reanalysis of VA 243. And it's quite interesting when I do this. I'm seeking to get the right size for Nibiru. And also something interesting came out of that. Well, the right size of Nibiru, and reestablish the correlation between our solar system and VA 243's depiction of it. So I decided to redo that data in a couple of different ways, so that it's so important that we really can't afford any mistakes here. So bear with me, and I'm going to run through it quick, but it's going to be thorough. Okay, so our first picture, here's a picture of Marduk, his father Enki, Enki's half-sister Isis, who's his mother. And as I told you, she affiliates with the planet Venus, and I didn't have room to put Neptune in here, but that was Enki's planet of affiliation. And you'll see that in the table in just a minute. All right. As I told you, Marduk makes claims that the planet is his, and he renames Nibiru Marduk in the Enuma Elish. So I pulled out a little reference from my book, The Seventh Planet Mercury Rising, on page 38, where this comes up. And I'm summarizing the blow-by-blow from the Enuma Elish. And before I go to the full-on story where I bring it all together for you, so I just wanted to get a snippet out for you. Okay, so Nibiru rested on top of the sun for 900 years. Captured in the sun's orbit, I ask? And this is my reference to page 233 from, I believe that was Stephanie Dolly's book, but that's from The Seventh Planet, so you can look it up there. The sun's solar radiation disturbs Tiamat. Ea and his wife Damkina have offspring, naming their firstborn son Marduk. Herein is where Marduk takes liberty with the account as the progeny of these two high-ranking Anunnaki Council members, and establishing his birthright spawned in the heavens. That's what he's trying to portray. Okay, well that was the Babylonian epic of creation. So you see that his name shows up way back in that account, or he put it in there what it looks like, right as he became the chief deity of Babylon. This table 1 shows the celestial body names and their ranks, if you were counting from the outside in, from the epic of creation, which is the Enuma Elish. And I just wanted to bring this up so I could point out a few of the Anunnaki names that were affiliated with the planets that we talked about a couple times, but you can follow it from Nibiru and the Enuma Elish all the way through to Greece and Rome, where in Rome they named the planets directly after the gods. So you can see, for instance, Mercury, who we know was Mumu in the Epic of Creation. That's what the planet was called. Well, we know that was Ningshita's affiliation. And he was known as God Mercury and Hermes and many other names. The planet Venus is called Lahamu in the Epic of Creation, and that was Ninmah's planet. And she's also called Damkina. That was Enki's wife. Okay, so we just mentioned in the headlines that she was the mother of Marduk. Okay, so while we're talking about Marduk, let's jump down to him. So here's Nibiru at the bottom, and you can see in the Epic of Creation he calls it Marduk. Well, some other names for him were Bel or Moloch, as I showed you in the Palmyra document from the last report in episode 2. Let's do a couple other ones. Here's Enlil. He's got Jupiter. And as we mentioned, Enki Nudimmud, what is his name in the Epic of Creation? He was also called Ea in the Epic of Creation. So Ea Nudimmud, Enki, he was called the god Neptune, or Poseidon in Greece and Neptune in Rome. And then Anu himself looked like he had the planet Uranus. And then a few of these I don't actually know. I'll have to keep digging. I think Mars might have been one of the warring sons, Ninurta or Nergal, or one of them, I'm not sure. But I believe it was Enlil's kid, so I got to look into that. Okay, so let's move on. We talked about the Lucifer scope being on Mount Graham, Arizona, set up to look in the infrared range. And, you know, a lot of amateur astronomers have been posting a lot of evidence that something's being seen in the skies. And I've gone over a few of those videos with you, as have many others. And until you, like I said, until you see it for yourself with no optics, clear every day, not obscured, you won't believe it. But by the time it makes to that point, it's not going to be visible like that for very long. Okay. So, as we're stating, Marduk named Nibiru, or renamed Nibiru after himself in the Enuma Elish. Well, at the same time, this scope is named Lucifer, is in the northern hemisphere, that's looking for Planet X. Well, there's your link, okay? And of course, they came up with some clever acronym to try to make it fit the... Actually, they came up with the astronomical terms to make it fit the acronym, and I thought it was pretty poorly done. Way overkill. Okay, we talked about the Palmyra arches linking Marduk, Bel Marduk, to this New World Order. And it looks like these 1,000 points of light, or these arches that he said were going to be put out. Well, one of them here showed up in London. I can't remember which square this is, but this was the one that was recreated with a 3D printing chisel and some rock, even capturing the, I don't know, the places where the edifice has problems and reproducing those. Okay. So now we've established that Marduk's the offspring of Enki and Ninmah, whose planetary affiliation is Venus. And in this article that I shared with you last time, I thought Michael Snyder did a good job. He was focusing on the Palmyra arches, which I'm not going to go back into. But in that research into the origins for the gods affiliated with Palmyra, this is where we clearly see the link to Marduk. Okay, and it's no surprise he was in Babylon and in that area fighting back and forth with Enlil. So I'm not surprised. Okay, now this is the part where we just said Enlil and Marduk are at war, but I threw in the name Yahweh for you because most people still cannot grasp that there are multiple names been used for Enlil, including Jehovah, El Shaddai, Yahweh, so on and so forth, and Zeus and Jupiter. Okay, those were some of his other names, and Ahriman in the Zoroastrian religion. So I wanted to go over this real quick about Nebuchadnezzar that shows up in Isaiah 14, because I think a lot of people are confused about who Lucifer is because of the Bible. So I want to go a little bit over this, and I asserted in my last video that Nebuchadnezzar was in the offspring of Marduk. Well, specifically, he was probably the son of, or related to Nabu, who was the son of Marduk. Well, he was in the lineage. So upon ascending to the throne, Nebuchadnezzar spoke to the gods in his inaugural address, saying, "O merciful Marduk, may the house that I have built endure forever. May I be satiated with its splendor, attain old age therein, and abundant offspring," blah, blah, blah. Okay, so he's clearly recognizing Marduk as the chief deity of Babylon. And this is the last king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. All right. Now I wanted to move down to this part of the statement. Now, Nebuchadnezzar is portrayed in a very unflattering light in the Bible, and I'm going to hopefully explain to you why. Most notably in the book of Daniel and the book of Jeremiah, we are seen as the enemy of God, and one whom the deity of the Israelites intend to make an example of, or conversely, the agent of God used as a scourge against the faithless followers of Yahweh. So this is how they were portraying each other back and forth. All right, I hope that's pretty clear to you that the enemy of Enlil is really what that should say, where he portrayed himself as God in the Old Testament to the Israelites, which I've said over and over and over. Okay, it's not to be beating up somebody's religion. We're just trying to track these entities down and pin them down for what they did to humanity. That's all I'm trying to do. Now, I don't really care about dualism, this one's good or this one's bad. I'm just pointing out the roles they played in the simulator for us. And you can decide how you want to deal with them yourself. But know that Enlil was Yahweh. No question. Okay, let's go back to the Bible while we're talking about this. And in Isaiah 14:12, I stated that this was the sole reference to Lucifer. And it disappears in the New International Version, but it's still available in the King James Version. Well, this is a Latin term, as I mentioned. Didn't even exist when the Hebrew Levitical priests were exposed to Babylon when they were taken captive there by Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, but, excuse me. So what I wanted to bring up about this verse is how it links Isis, who we now said was affiliated with Venus, well, that's the morning star, to her son Marduk, and his offspring via Nebo or Nabu, who was the source name for the prefix of Nebuchadnezzar, the last king of Babylon. Now this is clearly, in my opinion, in Isaiah 14:12, Enlil smearing his half-sister Ninmah for birthing Marduk and his offspring clan that are occupying his assigned territory in Mesopotamia. So he looks like he's smearing the fallen king Nebuchadnezzar, but the reality is it has to do with the whole clan. And worst of all, Marduk is the son of Enki, who's Enlil's arch nemesis. So how dare his sister Ninmah have kids with his arch nemesis brother, and then they end up in his territory? I wanted to go and bring up Isaiah 14 so we could go over that just real quick. I know I've focused on verse 12 before, but I think you need to understand it in the bigger context, because this is the only reference we have in the entire Bible. And like I said, it shows up in the King James Version, but it is removed by the time you get to the New International Version, renaming it Morning Star. So let's just read this real quick. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Will sit upon also the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be the Most High. Now, if you realize in the Enuma Elish that Nibiru, according to the Anunnaki, was probably the planet that they termed heaven multiple times in their documents, where they referred to it. Even in the Adapa tale, he was taken to heaven. Well, he was taken to Nibiru. So, if Marduk renamed Nibiru after himself in the Enuma Elish, is this not an attempt by him to thwart the kingship on Nibiru? Establish his preeminence in the heavens, right? Specifically, he'd be challenging Anu, the king of Nibiru, or Enlil if he thought he was in line, because he was rank 50 when he showed up on the earth. He was already higher ranking than Marduk and Enki. So, and he was the Lord of Command, so he would the one that would be feel threatened by an Enkiite doing this. So just compare Isaiah 14 verses, or lines 13 through 14 with what he says when he in the Enuma Elish, and we'll cover that in just a second. The other crazy thing that's in the headlines right now that I'm probably not going to go into real deep yet, but the takeaway from this Swiss tunnel ceremony is that clearly it's pointing out the opening of a portal or the arrival of Lucifer, which is very clear. So the fact that they've reported this or shown this being as the arrival, I truly think points to the arrival of Nibiru Marduk. So could the underground tunnels and deep underground military bases and facilities that are being built in conjunction with this Swiss tunnel connect to other tunnels? Okay. Possibly accessing the halls of Amante in the Giza below the Giza complex, where supposedly Thoth is in stasis. Are they trying to kill him so he doesn't come back as the next zodiacal ruler in Aquarius, which he said he was going to? So this is a crazy, crazy change of the zodiacal house, bunch of Illuminati rituals, if you will. So if you pay attention, you might see the meaning of what's being hidden from you all. And the last question, which should be kind of a no-brainer, is if they're showing up in this kind of numbers and these heads of state for a tunnel opening, it seems to me that that's an elitist signal to possibly give them some heads up that it's time for them to go to their bunkers. Not sure, but it sure would be a clever, ingenious way to hide it, wouldn't you think? And we talked about Thoth being in stasis. I got ahead of myself there. But he clearly states in the Emerald Tablets, after the age of darkness is past, and I'm quite sure he was talking about Pisces, that he'd be coming back and asserting himself as the new zodiacal ruler. Well, that would put him in direct conflict with whoever's vying for the head of the New World Order. And now you see it's Enlil and Marduk probably battling it out together. They probably look like they're working in collaboration, but I wouldn't be so sure. Okay, now that we've said all that, the kind of the last area I really wanted to go over, and it bothered me that I found an error in the pixel data from VA243, and it gave me a fantastic correlation with our solar systems, which made me a little suspicious. So I started sniffing around and looking at it and realizing that, you know what, I just need to redo this and start over. And it turns out it was a really good thing that I did, okay? So I used the same figure shown below that was taken at VA 243 in my Nibiru orbital report. And I decided to measure the linear diameter of each planet and see how the math turned out versus the pixels. And this is an alternative to using pixels, which not all programs do. So I'm trying to use the simplest tools so that anybody can repeat what I did without having to go buy anything. Standard tools that kind of come with Windows. The only possibility is whether people have Microsoft PowerPoint or something that can measure the length of a line in a drawing program. Okay. And the reason I got these doubts is when I started looking at the derivation of how they got the size of Nibiru in their pixel data, they didn't show it. They just asserted it. And I thought, you know what? I had reported that that's 17.8 times bigger than the Earth. But I look at this circle here relative to the sun, and then look at the Earth that's over here. It's like, it's much bigger than that. It's not 17 times. It's much bigger. So and it's nearly half the size of the sun just kind of looking at it, or at least a third. So the numbers didn't look quite right to me, and the correlation was kind of high. So what I decided to do in my summary approach was review the original pixel data to recalculate the size of Nibiru, not take the one that was given to us. And then I was going, because we knew the size of all the other planets, but that one had to be calculated by an equivalence relationship to get it. The second one, I used new linear measurements as a planetary diameters to calculate what we're looking for, size and correlation. And then the third one, I actually found out that you could go into Windows Paint and use their pixel measurement tool, which comes with Windows, so that I could review and redo this first method that I borrowed. Okay, so here in this table 2, you can see the diameter of Nibiru, 226,973, that was reported. And there's an easy way to calculate that. If you had the pixel size for the unknown, the pixel size for the known, and I chose the sun since it was the biggest number to give me the most resolution. Well, you could figure this out. So I wanted to get a measurement tool, like I said, that everyone could use. So I used Microsoft PowerPoint, or if the graphing program in Excel does it, you can try that. But I just use PowerPoint. And I know there's lots more tools that will give you the resolution that you want, but that wasn't the point. I want it so that everybody can do this. Okay. So I copied the image below from figure 3 into PowerPoint, and then I redrew the circles around each planet, added a horizontal blue line to each circle, making sure that the lines attached to the attachment points on the circle, so I knew it was exactly at the center. And then I actually grouped them together, put them over all the planets on VA 243 in PowerPoint, ungrouped the circle so I could get access to the lines, clicked on each line, and then got the report from PowerPoint what the number was. So I'll zoom in here just a little bit so you can see these lines. I'm not sure if you can see them. I redrew them across each one and then put the labels out here. You can see them a little more clearly. So let's blow this up so you can see. Okay, so there's one of the lines exactly at the diameter of the sun, and here's the one for Nibiru exactly at the diameter, just so you can see. Okay, that's a little too small. All right, let's go through this. And I'll go fast because there's no reason to dwell on a bunch of data, and we're going to get to the conclusions really quickly because I don't really want to bore you with too much more math. But some of this stuff needs to be established so we can go forward when we're talking about news and headlines and data, that it can be accurate. Because as an engineer, I don't like referencing things that aren't accurate. So but I also don't believe I got to recreate everything myself. So sometimes I'll trust. But in the verification process, if I find an error, I'm gonna let you know. I'm not gonna keep perpetuating it. Okay. So that said, The highlighted column here, first, second, third, fourth column over, has all the ranges that I measured in inches using PowerPoint, from 0.38 inches all the way up to 1.62. That was from the Pluto at the lowest range and the Sun at the highest range. You can see that right there. Well, you can see right here I've got a highlight in this table that doesn't match the original 226,000 kilometers. These are in kilometers, the diameter in kilometers, for Nibiru. And I'm going to show you why I focused on that one in particular, because it was really the one that was unknown, and how it slipped through with the pixel data before is on me. I should have checked every single one of them. But the bad news is it came out bigger than it was before, so take that for what it's worth. Okay, so I'll explain a couple other things too. So I did the same log base 66 and 6 that I did in the original table. This is a function in Microsoft Excel, so there shouldn't be any question. What I did have to do that I'll explain in order to get this column right here, I took log base, or log, and the number is supposed to be here, which is this column data. So that'll be the first number. But you can see it's a fraction, so I needed to scale it up to all of them, every single one of them. That's what that scalar is right there. I scaled it up by a factor what turned out to be 22.5 that made this number and this number almost match exactly. So I matched the scalar at the low end of the range and left it the same all the way through. And as you can see, it matched pretty well at the bottom. And some of the other midpoints here, they matched really, really well. Got some deviation here. The most deviation right about here, it looks like. And then off this one as well. Okay? So this is the log base 66 of the diameter of the planets in kilometers, and this is log base 6 of a scalar times this number base 6 of the same number. Okay, so you can see how all that closes. Okay, so this is a model of those. That's what we're thinking. So we want to correlate that. When we correlate it and just do the calculation, remember before the first time we came out with 99.503%. Well, when I use this linear measurement method of my own data, I get 97.434%. That's still very, very good. And that would be good enough for me to say that what was represented on VA243 has a very high degree of correlation with our solar system planets. Okay? Okay, so I think I explained all that to you and showed it all to you, and I'll make this this document available. I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to publish it. It's 20 pages long, but I'm going to make this available to everybody so that you can have it for those that are left-brained like I am, and you can go through the math and see how it worked out. Okay, so I showed all that to you there. Then I did a another thing. I decided, you know what, I'm going to go back to my method 1 original pixels that was in a table and calculate the size of the Nibiru and see if I can figure out how it is they messed up. So I set up an equivalence relationship, very simple. I took the sun's diameter in kilometers, took its pixel diameter that was read from the table, and then I took planet X's diameter in kilometers, that's the unknown, and then I took the pixel diameter of planet X, which we had. Okay, so when you do that and you solve for the planet X diameter, just multiply this side times that side and leave everything the same. So you get this relationship. I put the numbers in for you here so you can see every step. This is the sun. This would be the sun's diameter in kilometers, 1,392,684. The sun's pixels were 125, and the planet X pixels from the original data were 76. When you calculate this, that tells you that planet X's diameter is 846,751. It's about a little over half the size of the sun, it looks like. Surprised it's that big. I was really shocked it was this big. Okay, but this is what the data says. The original pixel measurements showed it at 226,973. Don't ask me how they got that. I have no idea. I used that number thinking it was correct while checking it, and I was wrong. Or they were wrong, but I should have checked it. Okay, the next method I did, using that line method that we did out of this table, okay, this table where we measured the inches, 0.38 to 1.62 inches. I decided to do the same thing, see how big planet X is based on that method. And I only got 2 decimal places of accuracy from Microsoft PowerPoint. So I just assumed it's going to be really bad, okay? But look how it turned out. So when we do the math, 842,487. Wow, that's really close to the 846,751. Okay, so so that's pretty amazing. Well, I started calculating, well, how big is planet X relative to the Earth in that case? And you can go look at the picture and see if this makes sense to you. This method 1, just using the original pixel data, it shows you take the diameter and divide by the Earth's diameter, and we get 66.41. That means planet X is 66.41 times bigger than the Earth. Wow. Not 17.8, 66.41. Okay, so I refuted that. So this that I had used in the past and this I used in the past, I now refute them. They're not right. Okay, the second method, using the line method, remember we got this number. Well, if we divide that, we get a scalar factor of 66.07. Wow, so that one's pretty close to 6641. All right. So the final thing I did is like, okay, let's back all the way up and let's measure the pixels on VA243. And we need a program to do that. So I played around with the free Microsoft Paint program that comes with Windows. And basically, you set up the circle. You've got to click on one side of the line on the diameter, see what the pixel count is in the lower left hand of the window. Move it over to the right side, put the cursor on it, and then take the difference between the 2 pixels to get the horizontal measurement. Okay? Hope that makes sense. So I did that for each one just real quickly. And I made a table for you here so you can see the diameter in pixels and how these were different than the ones based on whatever image size they had set up when they produced the original pixel data that I used in the Nibiru orbital report that I published last year. Okay, so from Pluto to the Sun, it ranged from 39 to 175. Okay, that's different than what we saw before. Okay, so let's do the same math we did before, set up our equivalence relationship. So there's the 105 and 175 pixels you just saw here, okay, from Nibiru and the Sun. That creates your scalar. And we find out that planet X is 835, 6110. So let's do a summary of all 3 of these so we can see everything all in one place. I'm just going to skip all of this right here. Remember, these percentages are correlations between VA243 with our solar system planets, the known ones, okay? All right, so let's just go to the summary table. So using method 1, the inherited pixels that I used, borrowing someone else's research from the Nibiru orbital report. Now remember, I only had 3 or 4 days to do this whole report based on the next show I had to do with Capricorn Radio, so I didn't have a lot of time to prepare for it. Well, method 1 gives us, so we have method 1, 2, and 3 in table 5, and then we have diameter, Earth scalar, and percent correlation. So the diameter you can see across, I've got them highlighted here, 846, 751, 842, 487, and 835, 6110. You know, they're not perfect, but it gives you a kind of a number that somewhat is correlated based on these 3 different methods from VA243. Okay. Now, looking at how much bigger it is than the Earth, you can see it comes out 66. I only kept 2 decimal places, and then we're going to round it. 6641, 6607, and 6553 times bigger than the Earth. So pick one of them. They're all about the same. The freaking planet is huge if it's truly to scale the way they've shown it. and to the size on VA243. Well, if we take that data, and of course you can't truly use the size of Nibiru in the correlation because you derived it from an equivalence relation using the ratios of the other planets. So it's not gonna add anything, but it's not gonna take anything away from the correlation either. So the first method that I did using someone else's data, with an error, it looks like, at least in the calculation for the planetary size, comes out to 99,503. The second method, this is the linear method, measuring the diameter in PowerPoint with 2 decimal points of resolution. It gets me at 97.434. So that didn't turn out to be so very bad. And then the third method, where I reproduced the pixel count myself, I came out at 97.381. As a matter of fact, the pixel count I did came out lower than the linear method. That's really surprising, but it did. Okay. So I averaged the 3 diameters together, and the Earth scalars together of the distance from the Earth, and I get exactly 66 times bigger than the diameter of the Earth. Isn't that interesting that we used a log-based 66 to derive some of the data, which was a hexadecimal number, and it turns out to be the ratio of the size of the Earth to Nibiru. Wow. I would have never guessed that. We've been told it's 4 to 7 times, 8 times, and then I thought I was pushing the envelope by coming out and saying, well, my data shows it's 17.8. Well, this says it's 66 times bigger. Okay, and the numbers are there. I'd like to hear anybody who tries to refute it. I'm open to that, okay? Now, one thing that a lot of people don't know in the sexagesimal math is 600 was kind of a interesting number because this was the linkage between sexagesimal math, base 60, and base 10. You multiply them together, you get 600. Well, this turns out to be a special number to the Anunnaki. It's like their race number, if you will. The number of the Anunnaki is 600. And the special reason for base 60 probably has to do with the nature of a circle and how it's divided using the number pi. Well, anyway, this was Anu's rank on Nibiru. So in a really wonderful book by Sitchin, When Time Began, he goes through the math relating the sexagesimal system of the Anunnaki with the base 10 system here on Earth, and a lot of it has to do with the understanding of the precession. Okay, so this is a galactic timing method for relating time on one planet to another. I thought that was very clever, actually. Well, if you now take the 600 and add it to 66, you can see that this is the number for Nibiru. Well, Marduk claimed it in the Enuma Elish. So now he's claiming essentially the number 600 as an Anunnaki and as the preeminent deity whose authority comes from the home planet as 66. So if you add those together, what do you get? Combining the 600 with that number gives you 666. How interesting is that? Well, this is the number that shows up in Revelations. Everybody always wanted to try to figure out who this being is. They could assign this number to them so they can put them in a cage so nothing bad happens. But the reality was this number looks to appear to be Marduk's. Now, he was also known as a great dragon. Ninurta was as well, and so was Ningshita in the history. Well, this had to do with their bloodline and their availability to be Anunnaki rulers as a king. So the dragon was a sign of a kingship, as was the snake in the Sumerian culture. And I think in Egypt, even the crocodile became affiliated with Sobek and this right to rule. Well, is this fact Marduk's right to rule what caused Enlil to demonize the image of the dragon, specifically aimed at Marduk, who was the chief deity of Babylon? and essentially making the image of a dragon the image of a beast for our perception. Okay, so there's some. So Enlil and Marduk were definitely opposed to each other, and I want you to think about that and how they would have labeled each other back and forth. So the idea that Enlil called Marduk, who was in his territory, waging war, a beast, I don't think that's too far to beyond to reckon with, because it was the truth. And by the way, I wanted to go back to something. I was watching a YouTube video from BP Earthwatch where I'm not sure what the source was. It looked like some wiki source, that had tried to pin down this 666 by doing something similar, using the 600 as the number for the Anunnaki, rank 60, who was Anu, and then connecting that to the number 6 and calling it Isker-Adad because it showed up in this document. Now, I have to disagree, first of all, because the Anunnaki Council did not have a rank 6. It went 60, 50, 40, 30, 20, 10. And then the odd numbers were the females, so 55, 45, 35, 25, 15, and 5 were females. So that doesn't mean they may not have some sort of rank that they were aspiring to and accumulating, and then once they got the right rank, at least higher than, it'd have to be 10 for a male to even show up on the council. So a 6 might have been on the way there, but there was no rank of 6 on that council. Okay, so I don't think Isker-Adad was the person that Enlil would be lambasting in the first place. It was his kid. He was known as the storm god to the Hittites and the son of Enlil, who, by the way, Enlil being the editor-in-chief of the Roman Catholic biblical canon, I don't see the father demonizing his son Isker here, but rather demonizing Enki's son Marduk, who's occupying his territory. And the fact is, Marduk was a threat to the Lord of the Air and Enlil. He was the Lord of the Command. So, you know, having somebody like Marduk, who's building a Tower of Babel, a bond heaven-earth facility in his territory, was a direct threat to Enlil's command authority and his control over what comes and goes back and forth in Nibiru. And I truly believe that's why Enlil and Ninurta had the city of Babylon nuked. Okay, so I'll let you read a little bit more about that, but Marduk did overtake the Anunnaki Council of 50, Lord of the Earth, through his warring efforts with Enlil in Mesopotamia. Okay, and afterwards he had the 50 names of Marduk read aloud each spring in Babylon, and along with the reading of the Enuma Elish, where he'd renamed his Nibiru as himself, so that people would venerate him as the Most High, right? So I think that's all I'm going to say about these Anunnaki relationships to the headlines and what's going on with the power struggle among them that could be leading to World War III from what I'm watching. As a matter of fact, it's been prophesied by Enlil and with his battle plan showing up in the prophets in the book of Revelations. But similarly, Thoth talks about what's coming down, and I think we're very much on the precipice. When the elites get the signal to go to the tunnels and they bug out, you can bet that war is going to be very close as a cover for what's coming. And what's coming is Marduk, Nibiru, Lucifer. Thanks for watching episode 3, Gerald Clark, 7th Planet Broadcasting, and we out.